So the question I want to ask you today is about evolution. Now, there is ample evidence, from science that we know that, things evolve, that you have mutations, you have natural selection, and, people, they see a direct contradiction between God, Islam, and, evolution. So how would a Muslim address this sort of question if someone asked them?
Well, for me, it's very simple, to be honest. First and foremost, Islam generally says, go where the science takes you.
Sure.
And go where the science takes you to a point where it doesn't negate established theological facts, okay? Now, as a Muslim, when we look at evolution, we're like, this is very interesting, this is amazing, this is a theory that seems to work, that has a lot of empirical and theoretical justification. So as a Muslim scientist, I'll continue to do the science and agree with some of its conclusions. However, what we would say is, if there is anything that goes against the Islamic narrative, then this is what we will do an epistemic weighing. What does that mean? It's a big word.
Okay.
It just means, what is more valuable in terms of knowledge? Now, we know science is amazing, it's great, but it changes all the time. For example, it changes because of two key kind of worldviews or thinking processes, induction and empiricism. Now, without getting people confused, induction is a thinking process where you have a limited set of observations, and for the next observation, you make a conclusion based on the previous observations. But the question is, you may have a different observation that negates the previous observations. For example, if I'm a Welsh scientist, I go to Wales and I say, right, what are the colour of sheep? And I go into Wales and I find out, after counting 1,000 sheep, they're all white. Therefore, I conclude that all sheep are
white.
Or the next sheep is going to be
white.
But there are black sheep, for example. So the next observation can disagree with your previous conclusions. So science works heavily on induction, which is never 100%. Also, science uses the worldview called empiricism, which basically says I can't have concepts about something or knowledge about something unless it's indirectly or directly observable. But that, from the onset, means that there may be some things that you haven't seen. So there could be a future possible observation that you haven't observed that could go against your current data. That's why every sincere scientist, and go speak to them for yourself, he would say, yes, science is not 100%. So when we look at evolution, we're like, it's the best that we have, right? But if in the best that we have contradicts the Islamic narrative,
a part of it,
not all of it, because we agree with natural selection, we even agree with the concept of mutation.
The Earth is older than 6,000 years.
The Earth is way older than 6,000 years, of course. We agree with all of these things. But when there are some things that disagree with the Islamic narrative, what do we do? And this is what we do in epistemic value, epistemic weighing. What does that mean? What is the value of knowledge? So we saw in science there's some limitations. Induction, empiricism, you're never going to get 100% truth. But with the Quran, we're like, it would outweigh some of these conclusions from science. Why? Because we believe it's from God. And we believe it's from God for many, many reasons. And therefore, who's going to be more true? Us, scientists, and people who are looking into the world to find the best conclusion based on the limitations of induction and empiricism, or God that has the picture and we just have the pixel?
Well, and you can also add that, there was a time in which most scientists believed the universe was eternal.
Of course. Like in the 1940s, I believe, they believed the universe, the steady state theory.
And contradicted the Quran.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, they said the universe had no beginning, no end. Bertrand Russell on a radio program said it's a brute fact, get over it. It's just no beginning, no end. It's just there. Now, if we were religious people, Muslims living in the 1940s, what would we go with? The Quran or what the scientists were saying? And there was almost a consensus on this issue that the universe never began, it was always there.
Well, science was wrong then.
Exactly, and science changed. But the useful thing here is to not to see this as a negative for science. It's actually a good thing, because science is the progressive development of knowledge based upon the empirical world. And that's a good thing. It becomes bad when you have the likes of Richard Dawkins and others who say this is 100% truth, a gospel truth, and they don't even entertain any type of discussion. Well, maybe we can be wrong.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you very much for your